Hi, TE Academy students. Welcome to the study season 2024 and the final session with Roderick McKinley working on-chain analytics. We can already discuss submissions for the graded homework if you like. There's more to share, I'm sure. Before we do that, let me just say some more words about submissions, certificates, and minting NFTs. In case you are following us via social media, Twitter, you can still register or sign up at tokenengineering.net to get access to the learning materials from Roderick McKinley, On-Chain Analytics for Token Engineers 101, become a do your own research maxi from scratch using ChatGPT. And yeah, we've recorded all learning sessions, get access to it, and get access to any related material, homework assignments via tokenengineering.net. Now, you all know that for receiving an NFT for this live track number 5, you have to submit a homework assignment, and you can find all the details at the Notion page under the section Earn Your Proof of Knowledge NFT. Again, and this access to the Notion page is based on this registration that you can access under tokenengineering.net. So first register for the study season, then get access to the Notion, and then take a look at the submission requirements. The deadline is tonight, so you have some more hours to submit. You can ask questions now in the call with Roderick, and then you can go ahead, or you'll receive information if your submission has passed in the course of next week. We'll send you messages on Discord and an email to inform you, and then distribute the NFTs over the next 2 weeks, I'd say. And the total free minting period for any other NFTs at TE Academies until July 9th, where we also announce who is our fellowship prize winner. Because I should not forget to mention that Roderick is one of the candidates to receive the fellowship prize 10K, first time TE Academy awards token engineering researchers and practitioners who have contributed to the field of token engineering with a great track record, past research, practical application of token engineering, and who shared their knowledge in the study season. We have 4 candidates. You can also find them on the Notion page, and Roderick is one of them. And you all can say thank you for these learning sessions with Roderick by voting for him, because the decision who should receive the fellowship prize is taken by the community. Any holder of an NFT at TE Academy can vote. More information to be found on the Notion page. Details how to take part. You'll need your wallet. With the NFTs, TE Academy certificates, you'll acquire voting weight. So the more knowledge you have about token engineering, either as a student or as lecturers or course authors, etc., the more knowledge you have in this sector, the more voting power you have in this decision for who should earn and receive the fellowship prize. So it's definitely a great way for giving back in the spirit of give and get at TE Academy, a great way to say thank you to the lecturers, to Roderick's in the voting. More details to be shared. Stay tuned, follow us on Twitter, or take a look at the Notion page. Keep your eyes peeled. All right, that's it from my side. Let's kick off the session, final session, Roderick. Thanks for joining today again. And thank you for running the sessions.
Oh, thank you for that generous introduction. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. I was just telling Angela, it's definitely been a push because I've been putting all of these lectures together as pretty much as we've been giving each session. But I'm really happy with what's come out. I hope you are too. That's what's more important rather than what I think about it. But anyway, without further ado, let's get cooking. All right. You see my. Okay, let me know when we're live.
We are live.
And on that note of making it up as I go along, I'd actually kept this last session as a sort of a bit of a placeholder. I wanted to sort of feel my way. So I called it Integration Next Steps. I guess an updated title would be Design Applications and Uniswap v3. If you're joining in for the first time and you enjoy what you see here, I'm an active content creator as well as a consultant, so do feel free to connect with me on any of these channels that you see on your screen right now. So the session outline for today, brief recap of the last session, day 3, review and discussion of the query and dashboarding homework. I hope to make that more discussion-led and get your questions. It's an opportunity to clear things up. And then we'll reconnect with the way this course started, to the issues surrounding design and engineering and how analytics might relate to them. And then we'll take a little preview at Uniswap v3. And finally, look at some resources that you can use to continue your on-chain analytics journey after this course concludes. Okay, let's go. So last time, we did a clean and thorough review of all the data tables that store events emitted by Uniswap v2 contracts. Okay, we saw that there are various subtleties that we have to contend with in working with these data that are both conceptual and technical. Now, GPTs are just correlation machines. It is asking too much of them to be aware of all of these subtleties. And any ambiguity that we have failed to anticipate in our prompt is likely to result in the most frequent solution coming back to us from ChatGPT rather than the one that we necessarily want. All of this means that we need to understand our data thoroughly and to have a clear conception of the query we want to create and what that process looks like, how our root data is transformed into the final product in order to be able to express that in clear, precise prompting to ChatGPT. Now, before we get onto the homework review, I want to highlight some further tips for creating better prompts. You can actually instruct ChatGPT to help you write better prompts for ChatGPT. So that's quite meta. I tried this out on some of my code and saw that it suggests something very simple, which I didn't recommend to you guys in the last session. If you're planning your query and you see that it's going to be large and involves several steps, maybe take the level of detail in that plan up a notch and actually begin to think concretely in terms of the CTEs that you would prepare to transform your data step by step on the way to the final query. And then what you do is write prompts, numbered prompts for each one of those steps, which is what you see being done in the screen grab here. So that's another thing you can try. As for the homework, I am going to proceed with some screenshots for each chart. I tried to expose the charts on Dune while hiding the underlying code, but that didn't work out. So hopefully these charts will start giving you a sense of what you should be aiming for. You know, you're not going to get the same charts unless you get the code. So I think it's still a fair test. And yeah, like I said earlier, this is our chance to talk through difficulties or maybe things that aren't clear in the way I phrased the question, which already came up last session. So let's start at the beginning. Question 1: create a bar chart that shows the total number of swaps executed on all Uniswap v2 liquidity pools and overlay a line that records the cumulative number of swaps on a secondary right-hand axis. Do this for all data available on a monthly basis up to and including 31st of May, 2024. So, Angela, can we open to the floor and see if people have any questions or comments about how to go with this one? In my mind, this one's relatively straightforward.
Yeah, I think we have a number of people who already started and tried. This is a good reminder to share the latest link. Let me do this. And while I dropped the link in the chat to the Dune cohort that you should join to submit. Yeah, are there any questions related to this first questions or first approaches you'd like to share? Don't be shy. It's totally okay to switch on your mic and screen. Otherwise, maybe, I don't know, Roderick, we can share how, yeah, we shouldn't. We should give
No, I mean,
instructions. No?
I have a question.
Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah, hello. At the beginning of each prompt, actually, it's written that you are like a Trina expert in SQL or something like that. But from my perspective, Trina SQL is just like a query engine, and there is no distinction between the language which is used in Trina SQL or just in ordinary query engine. The question is it necessary to write down that you are like a Trina expert in SQL, or if this is like a more redundant?
I do it because sometimes I do get things back that don't work in Trino SQL. There are slight differences in the language and in the way it operates. So I do find that helpful. But as you've pointed out, the similarities are so strong that you're still very able to get a decent result back if you don't specify the Trino SQL thing. I've started doing it. Why? It's one more word. But I do, I think the general question is whether we still need the prompt at all. I'm a bit superstitious. I'm a bit sort of downside risk in my thinking, so I just put it in there. It's an extra moment, but I'm sure that the engineers are doing what they can to try and sort of like take that first step out as much as possible. But I'm just thinking, I'm playing it safe, so I'm putting it in there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any others? Mate, there was an error. Yeah, so I see, I don't know what's going on here. The link is working because we are getting more people added to the team. The list is definitely growing, but I've been seeing a lot of people posting errors about this stuff. Let me just take a moment to go online and see if I can make a new one.
Yeah, or
they are designed to expire every 48 hours in order to sort of control spam. But
yeah, thanks for checking, Mate. Let us verify.
And this should hopefully be 1 minute. But it is people. I see the list steadily growing for sure. Yeah. Invite more people. We want. Okay, I'm gonna put this in the chat now. This is the latest link that Dune has given me. So try that, and if that is not working for you, Mate, drop me anyone who's actually in this session or in the Discord, anybody who's having this issue, drop me your Dune username, and then I can invite you directly on Dune as a fail-safe. So we make sure that everybody gets on there. Yeah. Victor has a question.
Yeah, not really. Just a comment to this actually, because I wrote you on Discord because I had the same issue. But then when you shared the screenshot, I think it's just I am on your list. I got in, like my name is One Love, but I get the error anyway, and so I think everybody is getting an error. That means probably nothing. It just
delightful.
If you see people, like if you see an empty list, yeah, then we have an issue. But I think there are people coming in, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. We've got about 12 or 14 people. Yeah. So
and also maybe just a comment. I think if I'm not mistaken, like Q1, like question 1 and 2, maybe we kind of like touched upon in the last session. Maybe that's the reason why people are maybe quite clear about this. If sure. I think maybe if there are questions to other like 2, 3, I might have 1 to 7 maybe.
Okay, yeah. Good. We're going to go through all of them. But yeah, just in case someone was coming to this later. Okay, I'll take that as the cue to move on to question number 2. Create a stack bar chart that displays the proportional share of the top 5 most frequently used tokens in Uniswap v2 pools other than wrapped ETH. Have the chart display the symbols of the tokens. Do this for all data available up to and including 2023. So we did cover this sort of like in the course of the session last time. Any other questions that emerge around this particular question? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. And create a bar chart that shows the total number of pools created for Uniswap v2 and overlay a line chart that records the cumulative number of pools created on secondary right-hand access. Do this for all available data on a monthly basis, including 31st of May. So very, very almost identical to the first one. You're just working with different data, looking for different charting different events. So I expect that's going to be clear to people as well. Question 4, display the result of a query which returns the contract address for the USDC with Uniswap v2 pair. And I came up with this question on the fly in my head, and I had a certain idea about how I was going to solve this. I was going to look up the symbols in the token CRC20 table, but I discovered that that table contains tokens which have cloned symbols, right? And it returns token addresses that don't match up to the real USDC and WETH. So just watch out for that. There are other routes you can take to get there. But yeah, otherwise this one's just a way of trying to get you acquainted with how you can look up a pair address from other information using the tables instead of relying exclusively on external external web services. Take a look at, you have to do more work to sort of filter it down, but take a look at the prices.usd table, because in that one, it's they can't afford to put in multiple USDCs and WETH. They're such crucial assets that they've only filtered down to the most appropriate ones.
Here's a note from Tiago. He says, I believe this contract address is incorrect, though. This is the contract address.
No, you've got it. You're absolutely right. So that is an error on my part, and I can recognize your pool, Tiago. So there you go. I made a mistake, and I've got to fix that up. So well done. Yeah, it's C9DC is the ending for that pool.
But the error is on your slide or in the question?
The error is on my slide.
It's on the slide.
The error is on my slide. Yeah, no. If you follow through on the question, you will get the correct address.
Okay.
So Tiago's got it.
Okay. Tiago, confirmed.
And well done. Bonus points. Question 5. Use the result from question 4, Tiago's result, to create a table which displays the token amount swapped as USDC or WETH instead of token 1 or token 0. Because remember, that's just how the token addresses just slot into 1 or 0 by sort order. We don't know which is which. And display these units in their familiar decimal bases, with negative values signifying token flows out of the AMM pool and positive values signifying token flows in. Do this for all available data on a daily basis up to and including 31st of March 2024. So there is some ambiguity in the question. I moved to chart it, and yeah, I didn't provide any clear direction on how to visualize this. So what I think is a good idea here is to look at the outflows and inflows for each token and chart them in their decimal units, which is what you see on the screen there. And we have a question in the chat from Tiago about question 5. Do we have to query? Do we have to query each token's decimals, or can we just divide them manually by their decimal, like 10? Well, if I don't know if you remembered, if you gave me that smart contract address for the Uniswap v2 pool because you know it off by heart, well, then maybe you can do it, do the same for the decimal adjustment. But most people won't know what the decimal adjustments are for USDC and WETH. So the exercise intends students to look up the information in the appropriate table to make that adjustment. And in the last session, obviously, in the slides, we go through all of the data tables and where all the information stands. So you have the resources to figure out where you need to go to look up that information. Another question from Ilya. I see the solutions by clicking the home, but is it okay?
Is it okay or not?
It's not okay. How is this happening? Where are you clicking?
I can share my screen.
Okay, share your screen, please.
So at least everybody has all the results. This is unfair.
Just a second, you see my screen?
Not yet. Let's wait. Yeah, now.
Now I can.
Can you click inside? You can click inside.
Yes.
I've made these private. Oh, I know what the issue is. Because you are all on my team, private to me is not private to the team. Damn it.
Probably, I don't know.
Well, you can see there. You saw in the top of the screen that it says private. So this is my first time managing this. So I don't know, guys. I don't know if it's honor amongst thieves or what we have to invoke here, but I need to take this down after the lecture. But now it's exposed. Okay, let's pretend this is not here for a moment.
Special bonus to those who are spending their time in the live session.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing, Ilya.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. That'll be fixed. It's the first time I'm working with Teams, people. Please do excuse me. So question 5, that's how we do it. Question 6. Use the result from question 5 to create a bar chart showing the value of swaps. Okay, so this is adjusting what we had previously. And in the previous slide, we just have units, right? Pure USDC and pure WETH. And now we need to adjust it to the dollar value. Yes.
Sorry, I stopped you sharing your screen. Can you pull it up again, please?
Sure.
Share your screen again. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, question 6 is live?
Yes.
Okay. So in question 5, all we charted were the absolute units of USDC and WETH. And we know that they have a dollar price that's priced in other markets, and then an average is taken of those markets. And that was one of the conceptual issues that I wanted to get you thinking about. So in this exercise, we do that. And there's this very strange spike that I don't really understand what it is. This is sometimes what happens with these data. You do a query, and then you see an unusual event, and you then have to go extra layers deeper to understand what happens. So it's balanced on both sides, and it happens in sometime in mid or early 2021. But it might be interesting to see what happens with that. Are you sharing the screen? Okay. Question 7. Create a line chart of the percentage difference between the daily average USDC WETH price given by swaps carried out in the AMM and the daily average USDC ETH price provided in Dune's prices table. Do this for all available data on a daily basis. So what this question is getting to is, again, this issue of how local prices can be different to sort of what prices given by larger and more important external markets. A price differential, in principle, it potentially indicates an opportunity for arbitrage if the costs of implementing that arbitrage are smaller than the gains you would get from executing it. And this is pretty interesting here. We see a lot of initial volatility and deviation in the early life, but then it settles down. And then we have this little spike here in March of 2023, which corresponds to the SVB banking crisis. So, we are seeing some sort of sensible data there. Now, something that I showed up when I was preparing this is that there are some strange anomalies in the swaps that every so often shoot the price spiking. And that really throws off the scale of the chart to include all of that. So in order to clean this up a little bit, I created an ad hoc filter to keep all prices below, the approximate all-time high, which I set at 5,000 USDC per ETH, just so that if there is some excess movement, I do still capture it, but I capture I cut out the extreme outliers. Okay, I'm going to just continue on, and if someone has a question, just sort of stop me. I think that's the better rhythm. For question 8, create a table with the top 5 most swapped tokens on Uniswap v2 by count, not by USD value, in every year up to and including the end of 2023. Now, this is, sometimes you'll want to reshape your data. We're very used to sort of cross-tabular format of displaying data where we essentially have 2 dimensions, a row dimension and a column dimension. This is very familiar from spreadsheet software. But data is typically very column-oriented in relational databases and all of these tables. So this is an exercise in getting you to reshape the data into a cross-tab view. Now, some flavors of SQL understand that this is a very common requirement and provide native functionality for you to do this. Trino SQL does not, so you have to kind of work through it in an old school manual way. But this is exactly the kind of thing that ChatGPT is perfect for, right? Like, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to move some rows over to the columns. ChatGPT, how do I do this? Question 9, using the address for the WC WETH pair calculated in question 4, calculate the TVL in USD outstanding for this pool at the end of each month, up to and including 31st of May, 2024. So TVL usually is subject to interpretation, but in the context of the Uniswap protocol, I think it's relatively clear. It's the market value of all of the assets that are locked in the liquidity pool. So that means you have to sum the market value of tokens in one pair, in the pool of one pair, and in its complement, right? So the way I've charted this is to show that split, and then just stack them on top of each other. So that's the way to go about that one. In question 10, calculate the number of unique liquidity providers who deposit liquidity for the USDC WETH pair each month, up to and including 31st of May, 2024. And unless the issue here was that I used the incorrect contract address instead of the one that Tiago put in, I need to double check that. I was very surprised by what I found here, because this shows that there are only sort of, a maximum of 6 liquidity providers on this chart, and that's like crazy, right? How can such an important pool be dominated? And then I did some extra digging around, and while I can't claim this to be conclusive, if we look at TVL, we're talking TVLs of upwards hundreds of millions, right? And most people just don't have that kind of cash, so you're not going to earn a significant share of revenues by participating in this liquidity pool. So either that, or maybe it's been locked out. When I looked at who some of these liquidity providers are, I was given the address of the Router 2 contract, which is an official bot contract, which is used to optimize liquidity, which would make sense for this liquidity pair, which is playing an exceptional role in the DeFi ecosystem, since lots of trades will route through it. So no conclusions about what's happening there. I would need to dig in deeper, but it goes to show you never really know what you're going to find. And when you get a surprise, that can sort of open a door for research in an unexpected direction, or teach you something that you didn't know. So that's sort of like a little preview and walkthrough of the questions. If we have no further questions about that, we can continue moving on.
Yeah, I guess just a quick note. I mean, even though you might, or you have the chance to check out other people's solution and also now see pointers in the questions, the most important result we'd like to see in the submission is how you approached it, right? So it's not about the final outcome only, it's about how you have been able to query and create the results. Would you confirm, Roderick?
Yeah, I mean, it's to an extent, it doesn't. There's not a difference. If you get the final results, you've got the final results. The query, the correct. There is more than one way to derive the final results. In problems that are relatively simple like these, you don't have too many avenues, but essentially you can only derive the right results by coming up with a correct query. But yes, it's obviously the intention of this exercise to go through the process to derive that for yourself. And that's why sometimes even just sharing these visualizations can be helpful, because they force you to see that you still haven't got the right answer. And that can make you give a couple more turns to the problem where you finally get that aha moment and you see what you really need to do. This is essentially the way I was teaching myself in a way. So I mentioned this in the last session that I've chosen to teach you how to work with the low-level tables that really capture what the smart contract is actually doing and how it writes data to the blockchain. But you've got these higher-level data tables that Dune has already created that extract some of the insights that I'm already after. And the way I was checking myself was to work with the low-level data tables and comparing it to Dune's sort of abstracted table and making sure that the results were close enough. And so, you know, it's a really good way, if you're lucky enough to know what the truth is when you're starting out. That's a fantastic way to learn. Victor.
Sorry, I had a problem with my mic. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
You're on.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that I thought actually originally that this was on purpose, that it's accessible and that you can actually see the code. And because to be honest, I started doing it by myself until question 7, and question 7 was quite challenging with the different CTEs that, and then it was extremely helpful to see your approach. And I think, I mean, we're all kind of doing this in our own time and we want to learn. And I think, you know, it would be just like doing a naked copy paste would be really like just detrimental to our own process in learning. So I believe in my opinion,
why are we here? I mean, literally, why are we here?
Yeah.
You know, exactly.
So I benefited, the main messages, I benefited a lot from like seeing the approach, and I wrote it down into some kind of Excel sheet just to kind of like have like an order of like really trying to understand how the CTs work. To be honest, I'm not sure if in that short amount of time with everything else is going on that I would really like get to a clean result for everything. So that's at least my honest opinion. So it's all good from my side.
Yeah, I had to spend time working out these solutions. This wasn't a lightning exercise for me either. But this is exactly how you learn. If you have the integrity to see, and that's how I learned with the guides. I'm going to give you the resource again, but when I learned with 12 Days of Dune, I was reproducing the code that these guys were creating on screen. So that is definitely a learning method. I thought this was an interesting approach to take because, you know, ChatGPT is a new tool and I was certainly leveraging it a lot. So, and yes, it was always my intention to expose the code after everything's been submitted so that everybody would have these resources to look back on.
It would actually be.
Thanks for making sure. Yeah.
Can I just add that it would be very nice, like just to see what other people feel about this approach, because I just honestly think that there are certain things that if you have no idea about, you know, if you just start as I've never heard Dune in my life and I've never done SQL in my life, I think that this can, you know, you have to dedicate a serious amount of time to this. So I'll be happy to listen to other people or maybe even support if needed. But it would be good to share this in case there's no specific problem, like if there's any good approach to somehow like tackle this in some other way. Like I'm up for this.
Well, that's the other reason why I put you on the shared team on Dune. It wasn't to unwittingly expose all of my code. It was so that you guys would know each other, know your avatars on Dune, and continue being able to collaborate on there. If that's what you so chose. But yeah, absolutely. Let's keep this discussion going and see if a strong a strong wish emerges that we can all coordinate on. Thank you so much.
We have some messages in the chat, right? Yeah.
Okay, so Mate, you said that if we count every row, then we get the total number of swaps. Yes. When someone exchanges a token, will it result in 2 rows? So I don't have the slides, but when you if you look at the table, did I show this on the table? It would be hard to see from the Data Explorer view if you don't know how the Data Explorer view translates into what a table looks like. But when you use the swap table has a field has 4 fields: amount 0 in, amount 0 out, amount 1 in, and amount 1 out, right? And they are all, that means that every swap event is on 1 row. So each row will record the flows in both directions that occur for that swap. So that means that when you count the row, you won't be double counting the number of swaps. So it's a good question. And hopefully that explains why you wouldn't be double counting given the layout of the table, Mate. Another question by Mate. How do we know which token to look at, token 1 or token 0? Sorry, I'm losing the, when looking for top 5 tokens swapped. Well, this is another good question, right? And this is actually at the root of the question, right? Token 1 and token 0 will have addresses, token addresses. So, and sometimes they'll be in a pair where, let's say we're talking about USDC. Sometimes USDC will show up in token 0, and sometimes USDC will show up in token 1. So this question is testing you on an important SQL operation, which is called union, which allows you to take 2 different columns on a table and cut them out and stitch them together so that they become 1 table. So that's what the union operation does, and that's critical for answering that question. I'll leave it there. And then, yeah, Thiago coming in, helping out. And does the NFT only? Let's leave that question for later. Let's see what happens when the dust is settled. That's the intention, yes. Okay, right. So are we're good to move on from the questions and on to the rest of the session, everybody? I'll take that as a yes. So I now kind of want to circle back. We have been very firmly in analytics land, and I sort of started off with the course with a more philosophical piece about how analytics and engineering are different methods, but how they can complement each other. So I just want to check in a little bit with this again, and let me just get my screen right. Yeah, the first thing that I would like to note is that all the examples in our homework either focus on the collection of all Uniswap v2 pools or a single pool. Now, this is less likely to be informative to us because we would effectively be generalizing from single case or observation or the global average. But we've seen that query languages and allow us to explore our data in ways that are highly scalable. Many times, all we need to do, if you know SQL, is to use the DEX pool address and keep that as a dimension in the select clause, and then add the group by clause to make sure that your data breaks out with data that includes the breakout for that dimension that you've included. And it really isn't that much extra work, therefore, to collect data on hundreds or even thousands of examples to build a broader statistical profile of matters of interest. So let's suppose for a minute that we have managed to collect a broad data set. How would we begin to apply it to design or engineering questions? And the suggestions ahead are probably going to be quite light in general, but maybe still helpful for those of you who are just beginning your exploration into more engineering-oriented career paths and problems. So let's just check in with two participants that show up in almost every utility-oriented token economy and comprise a key set of stakeholders. You've got the users who rely on markets to buy tokens to access utility on the network, or else access financial value for contributions that they've made natively in the token economy. Or you've got your operators, the team, the founders, who rely on these markets to supplement their operational funding and to monitor markets and or intervene in them in order to regulate the economy in some way. So, now that we have these two agent profiles, we can ask, well, how do markets impact the outcomes for these agents or stakeholders? And how might their behaviors change based on market events? We could extend that to explore how market events affect the overall intended goals and outcomes of our system, perhaps either through the way they impact on these agents or perhaps through other direct impacts that they have. But it's harder to do that for a general case, so we're just going to stay focused on the stakeholder view for now. Let's focus on the users first. We can come up with a series of questions to think about, how markets might impact them. At what level will access to the service? At what price level, will access to the service become prohibitively expensive? And then if we have a statistical profile that allows us to think about how likely that price level is going to occur. At what rate do we expect that users will no longer feel fairly compensated for their work if they are using the token as a reward for something of value that they bring? And how likely is that price level to occur? Do we see any correlations between indicators of user activity and price volatility? What is the expected cost of reducing volatility by adding extra liquidity from our own treasury? Questions like that begin to become defined and soluble once you start having these bigger data sets on DEXs. For the operators, how much funding can we expect to pull from markets in the months after listing? Are there any early warning indicators we can create about LP concentration that may suggest that our liquidity is becoming a little too monopolized and at risk? What's the churn rate of liquidity providers? How long do they stay in? Well, what token pair maximizes the stability of our liquidity? What is the marginal cost of providing extra price stability? How many funds should we have in the reserve to defend against a market event with an X% likelihood of occurring? By keeping an eye on these central economic concerns for both user types, you can try and set up an economy to either avoid adverse situations, provide buffers and controls for them, or to set up an initial set of early warning indicators which help you manage risks from the day you go live. And then you can, iterate and build on them as you build operational experience. Now, personally, I was motivated to teach myself these skills because I saw how much trouble startups were getting into with planning and managing their finances. So I figured that on-chain data would hold some interesting insights on these issues. Now, this research is still ongoing, but there's still some interesting things that have already come to light. And I started out by collecting data for any liquidity pool that had been created 2 years ago or earlier. The intention is to try and capture 2 years of trading data to sort of get an idea of like, okay, your startup, you've just come into the world. What are your first 2 years going to be like? And what are markets going to be like for you on average? Now, this criterion of just being created 2 years ago pulled in 50,000 V2 pools and over 3,000 V3 pools. But the numbers very quickly whittled down after I took a look at, put in a couple of other restrictions. First, only considering those which were still swapping 6 months in, which incredibly brings down the V2 pool count to just under 10,000, and more than halves the V3 pool count as well. And then finally considering those that were only sort of rooting a certain amount of dollar value, 300,000 over the total period in which they were active. And that leaves us with just 4.7 thousand V2 pools and 600 V2 pools that satisfy all these criteria. So really interesting there. And, you know, we can chart these attrition rates. This is the attrition rates for V2 pools. Let's see, I'm gonna have to look on my bigger screen. Anyway, I should have put this in percentage terms, but the vast majority of V2 pools didn't survive. That's probably more than 80% died after their first month. It's quite incredible. Then it's sort of like more respectable, but still significant attrition rate sets in. And you know, you would think that people would, okay, you know, Uniswap V2, it was DeFi summer, everything was going crazy. It's permissionless technology. Your grandma can go in and deploy a contract. Maybe everybody knows better by the time the V3 gets around. But actually, the attrition rate is still really, really high. We only see, you know, they almost halve after almost half have gone out and after the first month. So that's really quite striking. And then, you know, for that smallest set of V2 pools, what was it, the 5,000 of them or something, I was able to chart the evolution of price impact for the first 2 years. So these lines show the percentage change that would occur for the token price given a single $10,000 value trade at different points in time over the 2-year lifespan of these pools, and then charting them at different percentile levels. So what does that look like for the top 1% of pools, the bottom 1%, the 50th percentile? And we see that you know, some interesting things come in here. We see that like there's a little ramp up in price stability in the first 2 weeks. So that's what these falls mean. It means that people become aware and start putting liquidity in. But gradually, for a lot of the life, we just see that liquidity gets emptied, and over the life of these pools, the price becomes more volatile, and smaller trades impact the pools more. There's some more analysis that needs to go on here about how much of this is market effects, you know, something to do with timing and the majority of these catching drift in the you know, overall changes in the markets versus something that captures pools, behavior of pools specifically. But you know, this is the kind of fascinating stuff that's accessible, totally accessible. I've created this chart on Dune. It's a little more problematic to create for V3. I'm having to do that outside of Python, but you know, this really starts to equip you to make more realistic and informed sort of planning decisions for your economies. These very focused on finance and financial planning, but just to give you an idea of where you can go with this stuff. So as far as the skills I've been teaching you on this course are concerned, we've been focused on Uniswap, which is actually fine because they continue to dominate an impressive share of DEX trading. You can see them right there, over 50%. However, Uniswap v2 is no longer the main protocol. Uniswap v3 has definitively taken over. These are USD volume traded in 2024 in the year to date, by the way. And yet, you know, this entire course has been focused on Uniswap v2, not v3. Well, why is that? Well, it's because while v2 data looks like this, e3 data is a bit more like that. Not so much the data itself, it's all very elegant, impressively so, given how complex all the things that are going on are. But because of that, what you need to do with this data to get to the sort of economic insights like the ones I just showed at the last charts, like the price impact analysis, is definitely a lot more work. But let me clarify, I've not been wasting your time making you study the implementation mechanics of Uniswap v2, because these continue to set foundations that are used in v3. Lots of the same fundamental concepts and implementation patterns reappear in the v3 protocol, just in a much more elaborate way. V3 would be a whole other course, but we can't do that. This is the last session. So I'm going to try and do instead is highlight some of the big differences and how they translate over in terms of what you need to do to extract that data out of Dune, and if you want to analyze it on Dune as well. Please don't feel bad. This feels a bit too advanced or too big a step up from what we've been doing. The goal here is, again, to offer you a resource that you can come back to when the time is right to give you a leg up to supplement learning that you're going to be doing for yourselves in that time anyway. And I'm going to share some key areas that I found challenging that weren't resourced out there that I definitely had to work out for myself. And after that, I will be sharing links to the best learning resources to help you get through this and build out your understanding for yourselves. So what's the big deal with V3? Concentrated liquidity. Well, what does that mean? When we post liquidity in a V2 protocol, it's spread out over the whole curve that's used to set the pricing. V3 allows us to concentrate liquidity, so in specific regions of the curve. Why do we care? Well, the constant pricing formula that's used in V2 and V3 has this property. When there is more liquidity, you can buy and sell greater amounts of tokens without affecting the price as much. We just saw that price impact chart, right? As liquidity leaves, given sell order will create a bigger price difference, and that's what we were seeing over time. So with concentrated liquidity, being able to post specifically in a certain region allows you to increase the price stability in these regions where the token is likeliest to trade. And that means that you get more price stability, or more price stability is achievable with less capital. So the efficiency of the capital in generating this desirable market feature is greater. It's more efficient. These are improvements that benefit swappers, but they only occur if most of the liquidity is posted to the price range where the token actually trades. So how do we get the LPs to go there, right? We need to change incentives to do that, and it's pretty simple. We just we make it so that LPs only earn fees when the token is trading in the price ranges that they have posted liquidity to, and they split that fee with all other liquidity providers who have posted to that region. And in order to sort of provide some incentive for liquidity to be posted outside the core expected range, LPs get more upside by posting liquidity to areas that are less crowded on the curve. Okay. So let's quickly see what liquidity posting looks like on the V3 protocol using the Uniswap app interface online. Okay, and what shows up in your browser. The user chooses the price range that they want to post liquidity over. You can sort of wiggle those price bars left to right. Once the range is confirmed and the tokens are committed and the transaction goes ahead, that contribution of token amounts gets mathematically converted into a virtual liquidity unit number and is added to the liquidity distribution of this particular pool. So that looks cool, right? We've got the curve that you get on the Uniswap app, and I've been the profile I got by creating query on Dune. So it's moments like these when you really start going, aha, this data is really real. I just created this massive amount of code, and it gives me a picture exactly like the one I'm looking at Uniswap. So that's very satisfying. But let's continue. How does Uniswap actually make this work from an implementation perspective? Well, it starts by dividing up its price space into a grid. And each crossing of the price line defines a point which they call a tick. And the space between ticks is called the tick spacing. This seems reasonable enough, but it's a little problematic to pull off, because how are you going to do this to cover all possible prices, including very large and very small numbers? We saw that, we've already seen that handling token quantities by itself can be a pain. So how do we, and that they're typically defined in whole numbers. So how do we get around this issue when prices are almost always fractional to some degree? The solution is, first of all, to pick one price basis only and define that as token 1 over token 0, and then use a logarithmic base to represent large and small numbers with manageably sized whole numbers, and choose the base that sets differences in tick values to say something meaningful about the percent differences in price along the price line, measured in ticks. So let's see how this has been done specifically. Ticks were given a base of 1.0001. This means that in order to get the price of token 1 over token 0, we need to calculate 1.0001 raised to the tick value. It also means that every increment of a tick represents 1/100th% of a change in price, or 0.01%. Now, beware that we're calculating the price defined in Solidity base units, not decimal price, okay? Lots of fun. The tick range on all V3 pools is bounded between 872,272 and the negative of that. Now, they're not simple to say, but you know, they're numbers. I can say they're not monstrously huge. But in this log, given the log base of these numbers, that actually covers a ginormous price range from this very, very tiny value that I'm not going to try and pronounce to that very large one. And yes, there's more. The choice of tick spacing defines how fine-grained your price grid becomes. And smaller tick space allows you to discriminate your liquidity posting more precisely, and vice versa. Some tokens are very volatile, which means that the smaller tick space is less valuable, and some are less volatile, making that ability to discriminate more valuable. So what's the right tick spacing to choose? Well, we don't have to settle on one answer. We can give people a choice. And when you create a V3 pool, you could choose between 4 different tick space values. And a trade-off is created by making the finest grain prices the ones that collect the least fees. This increases the stakes for precision. More trading in a given range is needed to generate an equivalent fee amount in order to justify, in order to make that make sense economically. And so because of this fee element, when you hear people talking about V3 pools, they will typically be focused on the fee parameter and talk about the 0.1% fee, 0.01% pool, the 0.3% pool, and so on. There are a few more details that fall out of this setup. Token pairs are no longer unique as they were in V2. Some pairs are allowed, the same pairs are allowed to have multiple pools as long as they are set upon pools with different fees and tick spacing values. However, only one pool at each fee and tick spacing value is permitted. And once you have maxed out all the available the 4 types that are initially set up under governance, then you can't create any more. Uniswap governance does have the option to create different fee tiers or to change them, but that's just not being done. Everyone's happy that it's sort of like, you know, a good stable setup, and we aren't seeing those values change frequently. Now remember, the ticks are bounded between these 2 numbers, but the 4 available tick spacing values are not whole divisors of those numbers. So in order to figure out which ticks users can post at, what you need to do is start from 0 and then step out in increments in either direction, in increments equal to the tick spacing in either direction. And what that means is that the final number you get at the end is going to be different depending on what your tick space is. So, you know, all of this comes into how you have to handle the data and different things that you have to do, right? This is complexity that impacts what you have to do in a meaningful way. Now, all of this from an economic standpoint is not just relevant to how a user posts and withdraw liquidity. All of this comes to impact how swaps are priced too. Okay. Behind the scenes, every tick stores its own mini constant product pricing curve. And liquidity is recorded in virtual units. The constant product value is set by the last number of tokens added, or, you know, a changes created by the last swap. And depending how much liquidity is stored at each tick, this will make the realized swap price less sensitive to, or more sensitive to the size of the swap that's executed. Okay. And virtual liquidity units, however, have to be converted back into token units depending on the direction and size of the swap and the amount of liquidity that is stored in each tick. So if the trade is really big, it will eat up liquidity stored in a given tick and then take liquidity from the next and so on until the order is filled. And remember, this is still a swapping service, so all the liquidity is always going to be paid out in the opposite token to the one being received from the swapper counterparty. And yeah, how much gets paid out will depend on how much liquidity is present. Why do we care about this? This is a lot of work. This is very complicated. Why do we care? Well, swap pricing now it depends on the liquidity distribution. To analyze these markets, we now need to extract this data, to do things like price impact analysis that I was just showing you for V2. But for the 1 basis point pools, that could mean as much as 1.7 million extra data points, and all that gives you is the liquidity distribution at a single moment in time. So you should be able to appreciate that this is a huge difference in comparison to what was going on with V2, and it creates a number of challenges for extracting and analyzing this data on Dune, which may make it appear at first that you just can't do this analysis on that platform, but actually you can. That's how I got that chart there. And for a single pool at least, and I'm going to share methods that I've learned to help you do that. Specifically, one method for extracting data within Dune's limits and capacity, and a way of limiting the computational overhead that you have to pull on when you're working with this data on Dune. So the first thing you might try, or which ChatGPT may get you to try, is a pattern which uses unnest and a sequence array. You create an array with a sequence that counts from the smallest tick value all the way to the largest tick value. So, in the biggest case, that's an array that has about 1.7 million positions in it. And the thing is, you try that, and Dune says no. It tells you that these arrays that you create this way, are only allowed to have 10,000 elements, so nowhere near. And I thought I'd hit a wall, but then I found a workaround in some queries created by Kyoronut. I think they're Japanese. And it tackles the issues. It tackles this limitation by slicing the arrays in order to process these calculations. So let me show you how this works. V3 still has mint and burn tables like V2. And these events log data and updates the protocol values when LPs post or withdraw liquidity, right? And each liquidity post or withdrawal now records the lower and upper value of the ticks that match the price range that was chosen by the LP, right? But sometimes these posted ranges also span more than 10,000 ticks, which is the maximum sequence array size that Dune allows. Let's just make this more concrete by showing what this looks like in a table format. So this is a sort of first 30 rows of the mint table for a particular liquidity pool. We have the sender address, and we have the lower and upper bounds of the range that they posted to there. And amount reports the change or delta in virtual liquidity units that is going to be applied over that whole range given by the lower, bookended by the lower and upper tick. Okay. And we do still have amount 0 and amount 1 that report the token quantities received for the post in Solidity's native numeric base. So our challenge is to convert the data in these 3 columns into the data underlying this chart. So let's look at Kyoronut's method for doing that with using array slices that are limited in size. These are the key steps. So we'll count the number of 10,000 element arrays that together would span all the ticks included in the posted range. Use this information to calculate attributes of these array slices, their order in the sequence, and which ticks they start at and end at. And then use this to create matching 10K element array slices along with the liquidity change associated with each one. Unnest these arrays which essentially flattens them into a single column of tick values, along with a second column that records their matched liquidity changes. So what this allows you to do is sum at the tick level to get all the liquidity posted, changes posted at that tick, which gives you the cumulative total of virtual liquidity at each tick for all the ticks that have had liquidity posted to them. So in that sense, it's also a little more efficient because it won't step outside to cover the full 1.7 million ticks if those other ticks haven't been touched. Let's walk through this with code. So this is the first step. Again, these are just slides. I've created show you the link and a QR to the query. This is more for your reference, but this is where how we count the first 10,000, the number of 10,000 arrays, 10,000 element arrays that we would need to cover the range. This is how we generate sort of the array attributes for these slices, and this is how we match, create those array slices. So actually, in the first column, you can actually see that some values have multiple entries and some have two. So in the second row there, it just means that we just needed, we only needed to cover 2 ticks. So we didn't need to go the full way with the array to liquidity was posted to each one. And then we unnested these arrays, which, as I said, flattens them. And in the first column, we just have the tick value, and it'll have repeated entries for a given tick value and all the liquidity changes that have been posted to it on the right. And so summing them will give you the cumulative total. So Curonut's method works by collecting and unpacking arrays that have a limited size into a table with unlimited rows. But for reasons that I do not understand, it was very frustrating to discover this later, although also kind of cool. It turns out that we can do this directly by inserting an illegal sequence function, one that's supposed to be too big, inside a table function directly. So for whatever reason, something happens and Dune says this is okay, and it spits out that array as a full column using that table function. But it turns out that you can do something really weird as well. You can reverse that by using the array aggregator function, which will take, a column which may have 1.7 million entries and roll that up into an array, and Dune doesn't bat an eyelid. Like, these are things I do not understand, but they work. So I guess I need someone, and I was asking some of the Dune team about this, and not everybody had all these solutions to hand. So it's definitely curious. Anyway, long and short of this is that you can use table, sequence, array, ag, cross-join, and nest patterns to extract data. But these methods will generally be more complex and expensive. So I think Curonut's method still is more efficient, even though it seems a little, all of these methods are a little broke. However, we can use these methods to help us use less computing resources and lower our overhead by creating useful tables of constants and factors that don't change throughout our entire query. So remember how virtual liquidity units need to get converted back into tokens for swapping and for liquidity withdrawals. The math that underlies the V3 protocol means that if you know all the tick values and you know the virtual liquidity value, you can calculate the maximum tokens payable out of that pool based on the swap direction. And this is very helpful for TVL and price impact analysis. Okay. However, calculating these factors can be quite intensive, and it increases the likelihood that you'll max out Dune's engine capacity. But that's not a problem, because lots of the key values involved are constants that are derived from core protocol parameters that don't change. So they only need to be calculated once. And then if you store them as a materialized table, then you can refer back to that without it taxing your calculations at all. And once I did that for myself, my queries ran much faster, and I was able to go much further with my analysis. I've provided a link to this table in case you're interested. And well, that's all we have time for to talk about Uniswap v3 today. If you're interested in learning more, let's see. I didn't actually finish this slide. Let me just go on the internet to show you exactly where you can go to learn more. I'll add these to the revised slides that I share with you guys. So Liquidity. You can see the browser, it's on screen, right? Good, I see you nodding, Angela. So I've already referenced this in the slides anyway. This is a very useful one. A primer on Uniswap v3 math, easy as 1, 2, 3. They're lying, but this is one of the easiest and most comprehensive resources. And it's actually only 2 entries, but this is a great start. And after this, you should be reading the official core book by the Uniswap Labs team, the white paper, because this actually, not the core, well, do read the core paper. But actually, the core paper was, the Uniswap team got so many questions that they created a special, is it this one? They created a special paper. There we go, Liquidity Math in Uniswap v3. This is the key paper. And this will get you into all the stuff that I was talking about how, you can break all of these calculations out into factors. That's how I worked all this stuff out. So you have to get in and work through this stuff. It is doable. Be patient, and you'll get there. And then this is another one. You can see that all the references are on this math primer page anyway. The ones that I'm recommending to you. And then there's the development book, which is interesting. It's sort of like a guide of, it's TA fundamentals on steroids, where you actually build a V3 protocol in Python. And it walks you through the whole thing. And sometimes seeing this kind of simple implementation helps get you through your head around some of the mechanics involved. So that's also a helpful resource. And of course, you have the lectures that Mark Richardson has been giving, which will ground you into the mathematics directly in a very sophisticated way. Let me just check where things are. So, okay. I'm just bringing back the slides. And then, of course, if you want to take your Dune analytics skills further, take the 12 Days of Dune course. That should be easier after this. And it takes a different approach where you're actually coding along with these guys rather than sort of like trying to take this conceptual first approach that I've been advancing in this course. And Andrew Hong is just the guy. It's amazing how technical this stuff does, but he does but he does an incredible job of still making it accessible and helping to break it down. We saw some of his charts in the second session of this teaching series. And with that, we have reached the end, everybody. We have reached the end. And it's over to you for questions to see if you have any, and if there's anything else I can help with.
Any further questions on Uniswap v3 and concentrated liquidity, anyone? Joking here, because we were just running the final session with Mark before yours. And that's why.
Sure. I mean,
guess,
yeah, I'm very careful not to encroach on his territory. The man knows his stuff. I'm just reading docs on the internet.
But 100% complementary, these two programs. And I'm sure seeing many of the names in both courses, and everybody will certainly benefit from,
and as I mentioned in the last one, and as you're seeing today, understanding the pure mathematics is not enough to understand how it's implemented. And there's sort of like a bit of a separate exercise involved. Yes, you could understand the liquidity math, but would you have understood that, okay, we're going to slice up the price line into ticks, and we're going to set it into this basis. There's also a funny way that they've encoded the actual price. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that, you still have to learn even once you start going into the implementation, working with the low-level data.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? I mean, I've seen some questions around the deadline for exams. And I must say, the reason for the rush, keep in mind, folks, that none of the lecturers at the study season is doing this as the main occupation, right? All are making themselves available in their spare time to run the sessions and do the evaluation. And that's why we were trying to define a certain time line and period in time. But I guess, Roderick, you and I will be happy to take a look at the timelines again and see if we might be able to push the deadline a little bit, and then we'll get back. I mean, we hear you. Obviously, it would be good to have some more time. And obviously, we would be glad to have as many submissions. So let's try to find a good solution here.
Tiago asks, if you would restructure this Dune analytics track into around 20 sessions, what would you have covered? My feeling, I mean, two things. I just would have spaced things out more. I deliberately front-loaded this, loaded the course because I was sort of thinking, okay, I'm going to set this up more as a resource that people can keep coming back to. This is not necessarily, something that you have to consume and absorb as you go along. So I would have definitely spaced things out. I see now, the feeling I'm getting is that it would have been good to do more hands-on practice with the coding. I got very excited about this idea that I think has real merit, that if you really understand your underlying data, that empowers you to use ChatGPT. But maybe getting to that level of understanding about your data is probably only going to arrive with a combination of sort of conceptual explanation, which is what I've been doing, and some exercise that actually gets you to see, oh, this column is this, and this is why we do this. I was trying sort of like a different approach to what Andrew and Jackie did, but I think a mix would be better. The other thing which I was originally planning to do, but I saw that it just wouldn't have had more time, is that I was going to step table by table through the Uniswap v3 protocol and talk about all the column variables there and how they're different. I mean, that might have been more interesting, but I think I've given you the most valuable thing there, which is like the hardest, most technical part of actually getting that data out, which if you decide to go do this, you'll have to do. So that's the bit you can't easily learn online. So that's why I prioritize that. And, at the same time, fitting that into an introduction into why this stuff works. And it's just, I hate to say it, guys, like, I think back to 2 years, what was it? Oh my God, 4 years ago, when I first started swapping on a DEX and I had no idea what was going on. And there are a whole bunch of people who knew all of this stuff already. And it's sad, but that same knowledge gap is still there between us and a lot of other people. And this stuff is really complicated. So I'm not sure that lands on any sort of like recommendation or something, but it's just sort of, wow, you kind of marvel at how sophisticated and amazing all this stuff is, but you also think like, damn, making this permissionless and accessible to everybody is kind of risky, because this is really not straightforward. But anyway, we're privileged and we're all intellectually motivated and excited to be looking at this stuff. So happy you guys are in it with us. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, looks like we do have. I just saw the thing budge. What are the major limitations or challenges you see with tools like Dune? Yeah, this is great. So I think the GUI is the interface is not fit for massive large scale work. It's a nightmare. I was sort of like working against the clock in my own mind. I thought I had to sort of like achieve certain results by a certain time. And one of my objectives was to try and create a rich visual dashboard to sort of like add that to my work portfolio. So I was incentivized to try and do as much as possible in Dune, rather than lose time taking stuff out of Dune, then learning a different tool. Then, you know, all of those would add time to what I was trying to do and complete by summer. So I was incentivized to stay on there, but I have worked with other analytics tools in the past. The Power Query engine that sits behind Power BI, Alteryx, and these have lots of support to allow you to sort of monitor what's happening to your data as you change it. And that sort of support, even if you're still working with a coding interface, would be really helpful. I need to do my research to look at what tools are out there. Really cool stuff, platforms like Microsoft Fabric, which enable end-to-end analytics and give you a sort of like unified platform where you can extract your data, transform it, apply machine learning in Python, move it out to analytics dashboards. I want to play with that. Anyway, this isn't Dune's core business model. I don't think they are so community centered. I don't see themselves sort of like moving into creating a sort of more professional workhouse environment. They know that the people who really want to do serious work with the data will just pull it out through an API and move it into whatever platform. So I think the web experience for Dune is going to remain focused on, you know, it's great functionality for when you're starting out and building this community and supporting all of that. The way they are growing is growing their coverage, improving performance. I don't know. I'm beginning to make relationships with them, so I'm generally going to stay in touch and keep an eye out for. But what I would like to see as a user is, yeah, just more support, more ability to organize and manage my queries. But I fully understand that that's probably just done better somewhere else, and Dune wouldn't be moving in that direction. I think maybe some Power BI. Yeah, so Natty, so there's another provider called Covalent. So Natty asked, sometimes tools like Power BI can create this sort of like visual graphical interface that's helpful. One of the other providers, Covalent, are trying to develop that kind of Power BI experience through a web app, and it's really cool because as you define what fields you want in, you have these. It's very similar to the Power BI experience, but doing that generates SQL code. While in Power BI you would be generating M code, you're actually generating the underlying SQL, and I think that's cool. I was initially very excited to go down that route to get started with this data because I was intimidated by the thought of working with SQL directly from the start. But then I chose to go in anyway with Dune because Andrew and Jackie just created that amazing course, which taught me a lot of the core concepts I needed to get familiar with to approach my topic of study, which is all this tech stuff. So check out Covalent and see what they're doing, but they're definitely creating something in that direction. Mate. Yeah, well, I think you have to thank Angela for Mate says that we appreciate so much that you and the course authors spent so much time on this on their schedule and have made it available for free. Angela is definitely the person to thank there because as much as I would love to say that I'm a giving human being, I've lived too many years and I'm still hoping that there's a chance to win a cash prize. But yes, there's still another part of me that loves sharing and loves learning, but I got to put bread on the table, man. So thank you to Angela for creating a platform to incentivize and bring community and create, help us come together to do this kind of stuff. It's great. Yeah.
So I guess we can all confirm that this was a great series of sessions, and it's just a lot of fun to explore these topics, even though we only scratched on the surface with the 4 sessions. Maybe next year there'll be 20 more. And also we'll closely follow your research because obviously you're onto something much bigger when it comes to data analysis. And yeah, happy to learn more about this. soon.
Yeah, thank
And-
you.
And yeah, again, we'll get back to you guys. We'll sync now after the call about the deadline for submissions, right, Roderick, if that's possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's
And-
let's have a quick chat.
Yeah, and give you an update here. And for the rest of it, I can only say, keep in mind that you can give back for the knowledge you got in this course via the voting. And the 10K prize is up to you guys to define and select the winner. Keep an eye on our messages on Twitter and on our Discord, and any updates from Token Engineering Academy. We'll keep you posted. Voting opens in June. We just have to finally decide the date. And in the meantime, submit your dashboard and earn your NFT to have additional voting power. That's the best you can do at the moment, and the best you can make from it for now. And for the rest, I hope to see you all again in Brussels and in our community. Keep on learning. And thanks so much, Roderick.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and great to meet you all. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
The recording has stopped.